morning. Those that attend the church over at Yahweh, they're looking at me because they know that that's not going to be good enough. So we're going to have to try this again. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's a little bit better. I know it's cold and it's early. For some of you, you're sitting here going, what in the world just happened to me? A few hours ago, I was laying in bed all nice and warm, thinking about how I was going to get to sleep in today, thinking about work tomorrow, thinking about everything except for being here with us today. But something woke you up this morning, didn't it?
Amen.
Something tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, get up. And all of a sudden that 5-year-old inside you came back to life and said, I want you! And then that tap on the shoulder came again and said, time to get up. I got something for you today. No, just 5 more minutes. But then finally you got up, you got dressed, poured yourself some coffee, and you made your way here. And I just want to let you know how much I and the rest of the staff at Yahweh & Sons are thankful that you made the trip out here this morning. And you could have went anywhere, you could have went nowhere, and you chose to come here and spend your Easter Sunday with us. And I just want to let you know how much it means to us and how much we appreciate it. You know, Easter for most Christians is a wonderful time, but for most people it's just another day, it's just another Sunday. For some, they get Friday off and they enjoy that as a long weekend, but they don't really understand the true meaning behind what Easter really is. I think for most of us as Christians, we have forgotten truly what Easter is all about. We accept the fact that we're Christians. We accept the fact that we're believers. We accept the fact we've gone to church all our life. But do we really understand? Do we truly believe what Easter is all about? Easter is the most celebrated of all Christian holidays. No matter what faith you are, you recognize Easter. No matter what your disagreements are about different theologies, no matter where you stand on what happened and what didn't happen, you recognize that Easter happened. For some of us, for some people, not some of us, but for some people, you just can't fathom the idea, the concept that a man could have gone through what Jesus went through. That a man could be mocked, could be yelled at, could be spit at, could be punched, could be beaten multiple times throughout a 2-day course, a 24-hour time period. That a man could be drugged, carrying a cross from the place where he was beaten all the way to a mountain, to a hill called Golgotha. It could reach out his hands and have each hand nailed to a cross. To experience the pain that had to feel as those nails went through, and to hear the separation of the wood as the nails went through it. To have his feet nailed to that cross. The past few Sundays we've talked about different things. We've talked about the last words that Jesus said was, "It is finished," and what that really meant. How it meant that your pain, your suffering, the things that you go through day by day was finished on the cross. The sacrifice was done. The payment had been paid in full on that day. To be no more. But yet, even though all of that happened, there's still people that have doubts. There's still people that have disbelief. There's still people, and some of you may be sitting here today. Some of you may be watching online or going to watch online or saying, but I haven't seen the scientific proof. I haven't seen that this really happened. No one could prove it to me. And as Christians, we look at those people and we're like, what is wrong with you? How can you be that way? How can you not believe? How can you not see? How can you not know that this is the truth, that this really happened? And I'm going to take a different stance this morning. I'm going to tell you that those people that are that way, they're not alone. Matter of fact, you were probably one of those people that said there's no way a man could go through what Jesus went through and actually survive. There's no way that that tomb was empty. There's no way he rose from the dead. Some of you are sitting here today going, I'm just waiting for a sign. I'm waiting for God to send me something to show me that it's true. Because none of it makes sense. Well, let me ask you a question. If you look back at your life, does anything make sense? Where you're sitting at today compared to where you were yesterday, did it make sense? Did you think that you would be here today? Some people I know can't believe that they're still alive today. They thought for sure they would have died years ago with some of the things that they did. There's people that can't believe they're here today because they should still be in jail for the things that they did that God has released them from. There's people sitting here today that says, I can't believe that I'm actually sitting here listening to this because I didn't believe. Some of you might be sitting here going, I'm here because someone asked me to, I'm here because someone begged me to, I'm here just to appease them, but you're not going to convince me that this is for real. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to try to convince you that it's real. Because there was a man in the Bible who his best friends tried to tell him that it was real. He didn't believe them either. Some of you don't even know me, so why would you believe me? You're waiting on the same thing that he was waiting on, and it's for God to show you. What my prayer is and my hope with this Sunday is that God does show you today. Not by anything I say, but by what He's telling you right now in your ears. The words that He's going to share with you, the tug on your heart that you're going to feel, the proof that you've been waiting for, that He gives it to you today. For those that have followed me or know me, my sermons are typically filled with multiple scriptures. We're typically bouncing all over the Bible. And I told my associate pastor the other day, I said, you're going to not like this. He's a planner and organizer. He likes to have everything nice and planned out. And I said, I've written 4 sermons for Sunday, and I've thrown them all away. He goes, what? He said, what are you preaching on? I said, I don't know. He said, you know Easter's a week away and you're going on vacation, right? I said, yep. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm not going to worry about it. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not perfect. I'm not a saint. I'm just like you. I worried about it. Wednesday night on vacation, I got my Bible out and I said, God, what do you want me to talk about? Easter's just a few days away. Somebody might actually show up other than my family and they're going to want to hear something. He said, don't worry about it. You're not ready yet. And I'm like, every pastor in the entire United States of America that is planning on Easter Sunday has probably had their sermon done for a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. Some may be recycling last year's. And I thought about that. Oh, I'll just use last year's sermon. Nobody will know. And then I find out this gentleman over here's been here for 3 years straight. He's going to remember. Well, I'm glad I didn't do that. So you never know what God's going to say. This is what it's about. This is what you need to talk about. So my sermon's different. He said, I don't want you to go all over the place with the Bible today. I want you to just talk to Him. I want today to be real, because what happened on the first Easter Sunday was real. I got reminded that I'm not some famous pastor. I'm not Billy Graham. I'm not someone that's able to bring celebrities in to talk to you. I'm just me. Real is all I know how to be. I don't know how to be anything else. The real is what brings people to talk to me. The real is what makes people go away. This Easter hasn't been the best Easter for me. I usually get so excited about Easter. I plan for it. It's like the biggest adventure of my whole sermons is waiting for Easter. I was like, I'm going to lay down on Easter. I'm going to make it matter. This Easter hasn't been that way. This is our third Easter here, and I'm so thankful that God's allowed us to do it here, but this year was different. This year, I could relate to what we're going to talk about, and I think that's why God made me wait. This year, leading up to Easter, I was filled with doubt, just like you. I doubted, is this what God wants me to do? I doubted if doing the sunrise service at the amphitheater is where God wanted me to be. I doubted if going in this lukewarm water, as soon as we're done, it's going to be a good idea. What if no one wants to do it? What if they back out? I doubted if being a pastor was the right thing for me to be. See, this past year, we've lost many friends. And sadly, I'll probably lose many more. This past year, we've seen great people that offered a lot to God walk away. And I remembered what Jesus told Peter. See, Peter denied Christ 3 times. And he told him, he said, look, before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times. Peter said, no, everybody else will, but I won't. But each time someone said, aren't you the guy with Jesus? He said, no. Second time, he said, no. The third time, he swore and said, no. And right at that moment, the rooster crowed, and he realized it. But when we find out in John later on, when Jesus is resurrected, he goes to Peter and he says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, yes, I love you. Jesus says, then take care of my sheep. He says, take care of my sheep. And he says, Peter, do you love me? And he says, yes, Lord, I love you. And he tells them something along the lines and teach them. Then lastly, when Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? The third time, Peter's very frustrated. He says, Lord, you know my heart, you know I do. And he said, then follow me. So this Easter, that resonated with me. Because I think Jesus asked him, do you love me 3 times for a reason? Because through Peter's ministry, Peter, along with the other disciples, had it very rough. It wasn't easy. They were in prison. They were laughed at. They were mocked. They lost friends. They had people turn away from them. And it was a reminder of Jesus saying, do you love me enough to keep going? Do you love me enough to keep going? So this Easter for me was about doubt. Not doubting God, as some of you may, but doubting me. Doubting what does God have for me. So I wanted to know more about doubt. Now most of you know exactly where I'm going. You know exactly who I'm talking about. But there was one disciple who doubted the resurrection. There was one disciple that said, hey, you know what? I need proof. Some of you are sitting here today going, I'm in that boat. I know the stories. I was drugged to church as a kid. I know what's going on, but I need proof. I need proof. You know, Easter has been filled with doubts and disbeliefs. Do you realize the very first Easter, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and it was empty, and she goes running back and she tells them, you know what she said? They have taken him. Not our Lord has risen as he said he would. She said, they have taken my Lord away. That's in John 20:13. They have taken my Lord beliefs. She had disbelief. She didn't believe that he was resurrected as he said he would. She had been with him, had followed him, and had said this, that they have taken him away. She believed that he was kidnapped, not that he rose from the dead as he said he would. The disciples, if you remember, Peter particularly got excited and ran to the tomb. Why? Jesus said I wasn't going to be there. Matter of fact, even the Jewish rulers believed that he wasn't going to be there because the story goes that they went to Pilate and said, hey, he said he was going to rise again in 3 days. We need to stop that from happening because the disciples might steal his body. So they rolled a bigger boulder in front of the grave and they marked it and then they sealed it so no one could break into it. Even they believed that Jesus said it was going to happen. They knew it was going to happen and they tried to make it stop. She knew. Peter knew. Matter of fact, it says in the Bible that the other two disciples outran Peter to get there first, but they wouldn't go in to the tomb. Peter did. Why? Why did Peter go into the tomb? Because he didn't believe. He had to see it for himself. See, some of you here today, no matter how much I tell you that Jesus loves you, you don't believe me. You got to find out for yourself. Does that stop me from wanting to tell you? No, I want to tell you. I want to show you. I want to be an example to you. But you got to see it for yourself. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you open your eyes, you're going to see it. Peter didn't believe. The others didn't believe. The first Easter was filled with disbelief. Here we are today, 2019, and we're a society that's filled with disbelief. And yet, as Christians, we get frustrated. We get angry. We can't understand why. And the answer is right there. They can't see. They cannot see. So then we run into this gentleman in John chapter 20. We start hearing about him in verse 24. It says, now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my fingers where the nails were, and put my hands into his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your fingers here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, because you have seen, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. See, first thing that comes to my mind when I start looking at this is, why was Thomas not with the other disciples? Why was Thomas not there to begin with? Where was he? And it reminds me of sometimes of us. You know, some of us see the Lord before others. Even in our own family. Sitting in the same church. Listening to the same service. And some of us see Jesus and some of us don't. It reminds me of that. It's like, where was Thomas? Why was he not with his brothers during this time? Why did Jesus not reveal himself at that point? Maybe Thomas was just disappointed that Jesus had died. And so he just wanted to be alone. Maybe he just didn't want to hang out with his friends. I don't know. Perhaps he was afraid, but I don't think so, because in John 11:16, Thomas said unto his fellow disciples, "Let us go, that we will die with Jesus. Let us go where we can die with him." So he apparently sounds like he was brave. He's like, well, let's go where Jesus goes. If he's going there to die, let's go there too. So I don't think he was hiding because he was afraid. We know the other disciples hid. I don't know where Thomas went. Maybe it was for this matter. Maybe he just didn't care that much about the spiritual matters or had something more important to do that Sunday. Maybe he was just hanging out alone. We do know that in John 14:5, Thomas said to Jesus, "We know not whither thou goest, and how can we know the way?" Jesus was telling him about what he was getting ready to do, and Thomas was like, I don't know where you're going. We have no concept of where you're going. And we surely don't know how to get there. Maybe Thomas had given up. Maybe Thomas felt like there was no hope. But what I love about this whole story was that as pessimistic as Thomas was, as doubting as he was, as much disbelief as he had, the first words that Jesus said was, "Peace be with you." He didn't yell at him, he didn't rebuke him, he didn't say, "Thomas, you know who I am. You've seen me. You've walked with me. You've heard me tell you the stories. What is wrong with you?" He said, "Peace. Peace." Can you imagine? Can you imagine knowing that Jesus was killed? Knowing that you looked there with your buddy and said, "Hey, you know what? When I actually see him, can touch his wounds, I'll believe that it's for real," and then he's standing there in front of you. And Jesus looks at you, and the first thing he says, knowing that you're freaking out because you just got caught. Any of you guys feel that way? Like you lied about somebody behind their back and then you turn around and there they are? It's like, uh-oh, now what am I going to do? And then they have mercy on them. They say, "Hey, how you doing today?" They don't call you out on it. They don't. But then they come around and they say, "Hey, you know what? I know you don't believe me, but here's a hole in my hand. You want to touch it? You want to touch it?" I can imagine what Thomas must be feeling right now, the shame, the guilt, the frustration of what he had just done. The reason why I open with this saying that I know that a lot of you have heard about Jesus, have heard people share Jesus' love with you, and you're like, I don't understand. And the kind of the aha moment was for me is this, is that Thomas's best friends, 11 guys or 10 guys that he had walked around with, that he had known Jesus just like he did, spent time with him just like Jesus did. He knew these guys. And when they told him, we have seen Jesus, he did rise from the dead, he did not believe them. It was after that, after they were telling him, look, hey Thomas, we saw Jesus, we saw him. He has raised from the dead. He is walking again. He did what he said he's going to do. That's when he said, I will not believe it until I can touch his wounds. See, all of you here, every one of you, me included, we're told many, many times by many, many people about how Jesus loves me and how Jesus is this and how Jesus is going to take care of me and how Jesus wants to save my soul. And that's great, and I'm going to continue to do it, and you should continue to do it because you may be the key that helps somebody. But it wasn't until they saw Jesus that it made the difference. And it's not going to be until you see Jesus that you're going to understand what the rest of us are talking about. Now you can be like Thomas and you can choose not to look. You can be like Thomas and choose not to believe other people. But one thing I've learned in my life and in my profession, I'm a nurse, so I've seen a lot of people pass away. And I can tell you, everybody eventually sees Jesus. The hope and prayer that you see him before it's after you're dead. See, Thomas was blessed that Jesus came back and took the time to see him. See, Thomas wanted that personal experience. He wanted that time with him. But he also challenged Jesus. He challenged God. Thomas had this seeing is believing mentality. How many of you have had that mentality? I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I can touch it, when I can hold it, when I can see a video of it, when I can see this, when I can see that. Anybody here ever go to a magic show? They do some crazy things, don't they? You see a card disappear, do you not? Do you see a card disappear? Come on. You see a woman being sawed in half. They separate her feet's over here dangling and her head's way over here. Anybody see that? No? Nobody seen that before? You've seen mermaids on YouTube's. Videos of them, right? You've seen all kinds of things with your eyes, especially nowadays. Is seeing believing? How many of you right now will volunteer to come right here and let Chris Kazalian have for me? Come on. Why? Because you do not believe that Chris is going to put you back together. Do you? But you believe it's possible because you saw it at a magician do it. You saw a video of it. Right? Is seeing believing? Simple question, yes or no. Is seeing believing? No. Our eyes will deceive us, will they not? How many of you have seen something that you just really wanted so bad because it was just so beautiful, and then when you got closer and you had it, you start looking at it, you start finding things wrong with it. And all of a sudden it's not quite as beautiful as it was. See, our eyes will deceive us. But Thomas wanted that. He wanted that proof. He said, I have to see it to believe it. And a lot of people today in society are falling under that same category. I will believe Jesus exists when I can see him. I believe that Jesus exists when I can see him in the world today. And I will tell you the reason why people don't see him today is because people that profess that he's is their Lord doesn't act like it. They don't act like it. So they get frustrated. Now, is that the other people's fault? No, it's still your individual fault. I've quit many of churches because somebody made me mad. Somebody didn't look at me right. Because someone told me I sinned and I didn't want to hear it. Or because the pastor didn't do things the way I wanted it. All kinds of foolish things. And they all were. They were all foolish. Because I didn't want to get up in the morning. So I decided I needed to sleep in on Sundays. I needed my time. God has a way of laughing at you, I've found, because He took me from not wanting to be around the people at church because of the way the people at church acted to starting at church. So now I get to be the one that people get frustrated with. I'm the one they get mad at. I'm the one that they won't want to keep coming to see because I said this or said that from the pulpit and they didn't like it. I'm the one that steps on toes. All the things that I didn't like, I'm that man now. See, it's that experience. Seeing is believing, and Thomas wanted to believe. The one thing I like about this story is Thomas helps us understand the difference between doubt and unbelief. Do you know there's a difference? Doubt to me says, I cannot believe there's too many problems. I can't believe there's too many problems. There's too many holes in the story. So I can't believe it. That is true. Unbelief says, I will not believe unless you give me the evidence I asked for. I cannot believe unless you give me the evidence I asked for. So Thomas asked for evidence. He asked for proof. Is there a God? You notice if you read the story again, nobody went to Jesus and said, oh, by the way, Thomas doesn't believe you. Oh, by the way, Thomas said that the only way he'll believe you is you let me put his hands on yours. Nobody told Jesus that, did he? Anybody find it? But the things that Jesus said was like, hey, Thomas, you want to touch my hands? Hey, Thomas, you want to put your hand through my side? Jesus heard what he said. Jesus knows your disbelief. Jesus knows your doubts. Jesus knows the things that you're thinking, the proof that you're looking for. He already knows that. And just like with Thomas, I believe that Jesus is putting those things in place in front of you. And the question is, do you see them? Do you see them? Some of you have a calling on your life and you're like, I don't want to do this. And Jesus keeps putting things in front of you saying, do you see them? Do you see them? And just like Thomas, you have two choices. You can say, I don't want to see it and turn around and walk away. You can be like Thomas saying, I see it. I don't need to touch it. I see it. I can see you now. I know what you want from me. I know what you want from me. You know, Thomas had a choice, and Jesus had a choice with him too. He said, one of the last things that Jesus said was, in verse 29, he says, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those that have not seen and yet have believed. Those that have not seen and yet still believe. See, I believe that Jesus does reveal himself to everybody, just in different ways. Some of you may have never seen someone that was dying of cancer or dying of some other form of disease, and God heals them. So you haven't seen that miracle. You've heard people talk about it, but you haven't seen it. Some of you may not have seen, a drug addict that was at his wit's end, that was about ready to commit suicide. And Jesus appears to him and says, "You don't want to do that. I love you." And they throw the needle down, and they pick themselves up, and they find themselves at a step of a church somewhere. And then they find themselves at a hospital and a rehab, and they find God. Some of you may have never seen that. Some of you may have never seen a marriage that was completely busted, completely broken up. Looked like it was shattered. It would never be back together again. Adultery had happened, and children were dragged through all kinds of stuff, relationship that you thought would never get back together. And then Jesus shows up and says, "If you guys are willing, I'll put you back together." What most of you have seen is the death of people that you think shouldn't have ever died. The loss of someone that you felt like you should have never lost. Those are the ones that are hard for us to grasp, to say, yes, there is a God, yes, there is a Jesus. When we see these things that are the sin of the world, that the death has taken control over and take from us. That's when people need Jesus the most, is to have the belief and the faith that God is working in every situation. That's what he meant when he said, "Blessed are those that have not seen," meaning those that have not seen those things happen, yet they still believe that Jesus is existing. It's easy to believe things you've seen, but it's hard to believe by faith alone. Today, I think God is moving more than he's ever moved before, but I think the hearts have hardened so hard that we don't see the magnitude that we used to see. I think we have a lot of people that have walked with Jesus just like Thomas. You read the papers all the time, you watch the news of this pastor quitting or this pastor getting caught and doing that. And I think it's the same concept, is that they went with Jesus and they just let this world, that all these things that the world has bring, they started focusing on that and seeing that, and they lost their focus on Jesus. And now they don't see anymore. I know that's true. Because it's so easy to get focused on counting how many people are sitting here today. Success is by how many people are sitting here today, right? The first thing every pastor asks me is, how big is your church? Number one question. Not how big is your God. I never get asked, how big is God? I never get asked, is God moving in your heart? Is God moving in your church? I always get asked, how many people do you have in your church? How big is your church? Why? Because that's what we measure by. So as a pastor, you start looking and going, oh, I'm a failure because I don't have this many people. I'm a failure because so-and-so hasn't been here for a couple of weeks. So-and-so hasn't been here for a month. Or so-and-so went to another church. So I'm a failure as a pastor. I need to just quit. So I understand what you're going through when in your life you're like, I haven't seen Jesus in a while. I don't know where he's at. I don't know what's going on. And what I learned from Thomas is it wasn't that Jesus left me. It's just that I've turned my back away from Jesus and I focused on stuff and I challenged him saying, okay, God, do this and do that. But I'm not willing to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm not willing to do what I'm supposed to do. See, if Thomas was with his brothers, he would have seen Jesus the first time. If Thomas had faith in what Jesus told him that was going to happen, he would have not had to doubt him. He would not have had to ask for signs. He would not have said, I have to do these things. See, some of you sitting here today going, I'm not Thomas. I've seen so much negativity in the world. I've seen so much hurt. I've seen so much taken away from me. If God was for real, I need him to take some of this away. And then you look over and there's a flower that's growing in the middle of a gravel pit and you don't see it. Or you look over and you see destruction. We just came back from the Keys, and you guys know a couple years ago they had a horrific hurricane, right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Watch the news? Horrific, tore it up. And when we were there, we were looking around and we didn't see the destruction from the hurricane. We saw the rebirth, the regrowth that was happening. And as our guide on one of our trips was sharing with us, and he was like, this is so encouraging. Look at the green that's right over here. And all we saw was a whole lot of brown and a couple little green sprigs. And I mean, look around here. We're used to seeing green. We're green all over. And they had all this brown, and there was these sprigs of green just popping up all over the place. And he was so excited. He was like, rebirth is happening right here. Rebirth is happening. In the midst of all this death and destruction, rebirth is happening. And as a follower, as a Christian, as a pastor, that's what we need to be focusing on. Is not so much focusing on the dead trees that are around us, but focusing on the people that continue to grow, that continuing to lean towards Jesus, and to see the rebirth, to see the regrowth that's happening in this world today. See, sin only continues to win as long as we continue to die. It's that simple. It's that simple. Poor Thomas, he gets picked on so much, but Thomas wasn't no different than any of us. No different. The only difference is he was honest. You can be honest. You can be honest with God. You can be honest with yourself. See, the tomb was just a place for Jesus to rest while he prepared to celebrate the victory. The tomb was empty. Multiple people went there. It was empty. People that believed in Christ went there. It was empty. The guards and people that didn't believe went there, and guess what? It was empty. You can go there today. All you're going to find is the same empty tomb. It's empty. It's empty. See, Thomas reminds us that unbelief robs us of blessings and opportunities. You know what's funny is when a skeptic says, I will not believe unless X, Y, and Z, you know they're already admitting they believe. Think about it. I will not believe unless I see this or that. And they're telling you they already believe because they're believing in their scientific process of proving something. Think about it. Why would you need proof of something you already don't believe in? I don't need you to prove something I don't believe. Why do I need you to prove it? I don't believe. I believe there's a possibility, so that's why I need proof. To either prove it is or prove it isn't. There obviously is a possibility. They believe in the validity of their test or experience that they have devised. If they have faith in their own scientific approach, then why can't they have faith in what God has revealed? You know, doubt is often an intellectual problem. We want to believe, but the faith is overwhelmed by problems and questions. I've had many people tell me, as we talked about salvation, they said, you know, I want to believe, but I just can't. I want to believe, but there's just so much in this world that's going wrong. that every time I look around I see death. Every time I look around I see innocent people dying. Every time I look around I see destruction. Every time I look around I see hate. Every time I look around I see one person turning their back on the other. I want to believe, but I can't. But I can't. There's just too many problems. There's too many holes in the story. A man can die and rise again. It's impossible. It's impossible, right? The Bible addresses that in Luke 18:27. It says, and Jesus said, what's impossible for man is possible for God. I have this very simple thinking, and that is that if I can make sense of it, then obviously there's no God. If I can do it, then obviously there's no God. Why would I need a God that can do what I can do? That doesn't make sense to me. I want a God that's thinking is beyond my thinking. I want a God whose understanding is beyond my understanding. I want a God whose powers are beyond my powers. I want a God that can do things that I cannot do. I don't want a God that's equal with me. I want a God that's superior to me, that can do things that I could never do. I want a God that loves me so much that can do things through me that I could never do on my own. There's a lot of people sitting here that I know very closely, and I know that each and every one of you have a testimony of saying that God did things through me that I couldn't do on my own. That I've stopped drinking, that I've stopped doing drugs, that I stopped lying, that I stopped hurting people, that I stopped stealing, that I stopped multiple things, not because I wanted to on my own or I had the power of my own, because I tried many, many times on my own and I just couldn't do it. And it wasn't until God decided and I gave it to Him and He accepted my forgiveness and He accepted my request for forgiveness and He took it away from me. That's when it happened. That's when it happened. So I'm okay with not being able to explain everything in the Bible. You may not be okay with it, but I'm okay that I can't explain it. I'm okay that I can't prove to you that these things really happened. Because if I could, then I wouldn't be able to say that there is a God. I couldn't say that there is a God. And I'm thankful to be able to stand here today and tell you there is a living God. The proof is in the fact I can't prove it. Isn't that funny? The proof is in the fact I cannot prove it. Because anything I can prove is things that I can do on my own. It's things I can do on my own. If I can do it on my own, I do not need God. And most people think that. Most people think that. The Bible's filled with people that think that. Revelation tells stories of churches that thought that they could do it on their own. They had enough money. They had it all. But as we all find, generation after generation, life after life, it doesn't work that way. We can't do it on our own. I believe unbelief is a moral problem. We simply will not believe. It's the morality of people today that makes the belief so strong. There's people every day that focus with simple things that we didn't even think were an issue, and it's because the morals have changed so greatly. So as your morals change, your belief cycles change. What we used to say was sin, we now say is just the way it is. If someone says something is sin, then they end up getting asked to leave the church. There's pastors that have been asked to leave the church because they have quoted what the Bible has said is sin. And the church is like, oh, you can't do that because people won't show up. My grandfather was a fundamental independent Baptist preacher from the hills of West Virginia. He was extremely strict. We couldn't go eat anywhere that served alcohol. Now they try to go somewhere to eat that doesn't serve alcohol. You'll go hungry. But he wouldn't go there. Why? He says, because he was an old alcoholic. And he said, it's too tempting. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to advocate for it. My grandfather's nickname was Bud, which I always thought was funny, because this was back in the 70s. And we would go to revivals, and my grandfather would get ready to get up to preach, and they'd be announcing him. And you know what they would say every single time? The pastor would announce, yeah, here comes Reverend Charles Reed. This Bud's for you. Anybody know the commercial? They would use that. My grandfather hated it because he used to be an alcoholic. He's like, I don't want any reference to alcohol with my name, but they use that every time. This Bud's for you. Now as the morality has changed, that people don't even think about it anymore. Christians don't even think about the alcohol, whether it's a sin or not. We're not going to discuss that. But just the playing around with it, with what is and what isn't sin. Morals have changed and caused us to unbelief. What is the object of your faith? For those who are true followers of Christ, they put their faith in God and His Word, while unsaved people put their faith in themselves. I believe in me. And when I see Christians that change, and they go and they start putting their beliefs in themselves, you know, my money situation's bad, so I'm going to go out and get 3 jobs and neglect coming to church, and neglect my Bible study, and neglect my time with God, and neglect my family. Who are they putting their faith in? Themselves. And once they put their faith in themselves, and then their family starts to suffer, or their finances don't improve, and these things start happening, what is the first thing they do? They get mad at God. And then they come and talk to me, and I'm like, dude, you put your faith in the wrong thing. You put your faith in yourself. You didn't put your faith in God. And you've neglected God in the process. And the Bible is very clear. Anything you put before God is a sin. And you put this need for money before God. I'm guilty of it just like you are. Things don't go right, or the church isn't doing what it should be doing. The first thing I say is, what do I need to do? That's the first thing I say. I'm going to be honest. I told you, this is real. I'm going to be honest. The first thing I do, what do I need to do? And I get all frustrated and all upset, and I start thinking about, what do I need to start doing different? That's the wrong answer, isn't it? First thing I need to do is say, God, what do you want me to do? I got to put my faith in you, not in me. Not what I need to fix, not what I need to do different for me, but what do I need to do different for Him? Do I need to spend more time with Him? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Or is it just the way God wants it right now? Is He waiting for something else? I got to have my faith in Him, not in myself. So this morning we talked a lot about doubts. Personally, we talked about disbelieving. We talked about how Thomas is just like us. I like what it says in John 20, verse 29 and 30, or 30 and 31. It says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of His disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you will have life in His name. that by believing you will have life in His name. Today, today is a day that you either chalk up as a normal Easter, no big deal. Got out, went to sunrise service, made it to brunch before the normal church people did. Had to go home, take a nap, prepare for Monday morning. Or today could be a Sunday that completely changed your life. Today could be the Sunday that you will remember forever. That either today was the Sunday that you finally saw Jesus.